Okay, good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present our FY22 budget for public transportation and parking services. And as mentioned, my name, of course, is Jason Fairbrush, the Director of Public Transportation and Parking. Give me just one moment to share my presentation with you this morning. All right. And hopefully you're seeing a fabulous title slide to the FY22 budget. I say fabulous because I really was hoping this morning to be able to direct council's attention to the title slide and notice that it is made up of images of essential transit workers. These are the employees, whether it be bus operators, our service crew members that clean and fuel the buses, mechanics, facility maintenance staff, supervisors, senior leadership team, basically the people that allowed us to be able to accomplish some of the things that I'm going to share with you this morning during the presentation, and also enabled us to operate in the previous fiscal year without an interruption of service, meaning we missed no transit or parking services during the last fiscal year. So thank you for letting me dwell on that just a moment. We're really proud of our people and what they do on a daily basis, and particularly what they've done in the last year. All right, so I know that by now council is very familiar with the Leading for Results strategic business planning process. It's basically a citywide platform, in my mind, particularly outwardly focused, allowing residents and decision makers such as council, other stakeholders, to be able to see what is accomplished through the resources that are allocated to the budget, whether that's through the purpose statements that are associated with each program, or whether it's the list of performance metrics. I think the idea is really there to demonstrate what is being accomplished with the resources. And then within this last year, Embark actually completed a inward focused strategic business planning process. We are calling it our employee-driven transformation plan. And as part of that employee-driven, internally focused transformation plan, we also have a vision and a mission that we would like to share with you this morning. And our vision is that Embark will be world-class transportation that is accessible to all, and all want to access it. And of course, we do that through our full family of services, our fixed route bus, our ferry service along the Oklahoma River, parking services, whether it be on-street parking in terms of maintaining the parking meters, or it's in our off-street parking garages, the Spokies bike share program, Oklahoma City streetcar that we see traversing its downtown route every day. And then, of course, soon to come, bus rapid transit. Our first bus rapid transit corridor is currently in process. Embark's mission from our employee-driven transformation plan is to be a self-sustaining transportation network that removes barriers of location and socioeconomic status while elevating the status and use of public transportation, so all of central Oklahoma can safely and quickly reach their destination. And so since our conversation this morning, of course, is about budget and resources, I was hoping to take just a few minutes to share with council some of the things we accomplished within the last fiscal year with the resources that were allocated for public transportation and parking in Oklahoma City. FY21 was a very busy year for us, and have just a few items I'd like to highlight. We started the year in July with the celebration of the 100th, I should say the installation of the 100th bus shelter in a fiscal year. So we challenged staff to install 100 shelters in a fiscal year. They finished that at the very end of FY20, and then in July, first month of this fiscal year, along with Councilman Stone and COTPA trustee Sepner, we were able to celebrate the 100th shelter there in the Capitol Hill area. And again, just continued progress on trying to address that need of covered shelters within our bus system. In August, we launched a mobile parking app. So residents and visitors of Oklahoma City, if they choose, they no longer have to even interact with a parking meter. They can simply pay for all of their parking from the convenience of their mobile device. I mentioned our employee-driven transformation plan. We've shortened that and call it internally the roadmap. And you can see an image of the roadmap strategic plan there just to the top right. We completed that and launched that with our employees in November of 2020. And we followed that up with an enhancement to our real-time information for Oklahoma City streetcar. You know, we've had the predicted arrival time since opening, but we now have an interactive map that actually shows the location of the streetcars along the route. So we believe this is a huge improvement in customer service and needed customer amenity. There's nothing like being able to see where the streetcar actually is on the route versus, you know, kind of watching the clock countdown, if you will, as to when the next streetcar will arrive. In January of 2021, we opened the new Convention Center parking garage, approximately 1,100 spaces to serve the fabulous Oklahoma City Convention Center, the Scissortail Park, Chesapeake Arena, and all that area of downtown has to offer now and into the future. In March, we launched OKC Moves, and this is our comprehensive operational analysis led by the consultant team of Nelson Nygaard. And our staff and our consultants are charged with taking a look at our current fixed route bus system, analyzing the changes that we've seen in the city in terms of, you know, residential development, major employers, and really modernizing and just making sure our bus network still serves those areas where people want to go, those major trip generators. It's a very similar process to what we did back in 2014. And amazingly enough, it's been, you know, almost 7 years or so since then. And it's certainly time to update to keep our system as relevant as we possibly can for our community. And then finally, looking at kind of the bottom left image here, our Bus Rapid Transit, the preliminary design report that council received last week was actually previewed with COTPA back in March of this year. And then also in March, we celebrated the opening of our CNG fueling facility and our first electric bus. And thank you, Mayor Holt, for joining us for that event and helping us cut the ribbon on that facility. And then most recently, last month, we were able to expand the senior shopping routes that we offer across the city to include one for Northeast Oklahoma City that serves the new grocery store opened. I believe it's called the Market at East Point. And again, that is a free shuttle service for seniors in Northeast Oklahoma City, funded by area-wide aging agency funds and donations. So in addition to what you see on the slide there, we had some success in competing for some competitive grants to replace buses. As you know, we reinstated our Spokey service. We were able to conduct our rider and non-rider customer surveys and even had some success in legislation. One of our legislative initiatives that we're excited about is the opportunity for municipalities and transit agencies to actually become certified by DPS to conduct CDL examinations. So that should really help citywide, in my opinion, with recruiting and getting, you know, good employees with the licensing that they need. And so one of the things this last year, I believe really taught us was how to embrace being there for our community. Being there is one of our four core values, which include being safe, being there, being open, and being kind. And in terms of being there for our community and being there for our employees, in the challenging operating environment that we faced, we put in things in our buses like plexiglass operator shields. We've installed air purification systems in all of our buses. As mentioned, we missed no service during the last fiscal year, although we did have a 2-month period from like April and May where we reduced our service for various safety reasons. We did some community events such as mask giveaways at the transit center. I know I've talked before about the enhanced cleaning and disinfecting, the investment we made in equipment to better disinfect our rolling stock. And then kind of finishing up, being there for the community also meant providing emergency transportation during the extreme cold that we had this winter, basically providing transportation to those between the day and the night shelters. In that 4 to 5 day period, may have been closer to a week, but nonetheless, we provided over 1,900 trips between the shelters for our community. So wanted to just share that with council as well this morning, and really just try to communicate that we are continuing to provide the safest environment for our customers and for our employees that we can. So maybe shifting the conversation now to what we would say, what people are saying. And this slide should be familiar to council. This is the important satisfaction ranking of city services from the last, or I should say most current resident survey. And again, I know council is somewhat familiar with this, where ETC, our consultant, identifies those city services where that are most important to our residents, and yet the least areas of satisfaction. They then come up with a important satisfaction ranking. And of course, streets, conditions, and services around streets, getting around town, as we know, are the top 1 and 2 items for our residents. But I wanted to also share that the quality of city's public transit system received the 3rd important satisfaction rank, meaning yes, it's one of the important city services, but satisfaction is not near as high as other city services. And of course, what we take from this is that important satisfaction rank allows decision makers the opportunity to look at those services where perhaps additional resources could be made in order to maximize satisfaction. And I know you've heard ETC present this before, but I just wanted to kind of summarize that again. So public transportation continues to be high in terms of the important satisfaction ranking. And then as far as what our customers are saying about our service, and keep in mind, we did as we always do, an annual customer survey. We did this in the fall of 2020. We use I say we, meaning Embark, uses the same consultant, ETC, that does the citywide survey. So I know you're familiar with the statistical validity and the confidence intervals of those surveys. But basically, if you see here, I just have a summary of overall service ratings. So as you can see, we had a 70% overall satisfaction with Embark services. And then wanted to pull in some responses related to feelings of safety, considering the environment we were operating in this last current year. And what I really wanted to kind of dwell on here for a minute was just the fact that, in a year like last year, where you might expect, safety indicators to go down, we really actually did a really good job of maintaining those safety ratings. We saw very little decline. Excuse me. And the one I did want to focus on a bit was the bottom one there in terms of safety procedures while riding the bus being 82%. So again, I kind of started the presentation with acknowledgement of our employees and all their hard work and dedication. And I think, being able to maintain these higher levels of feelings of safety during the last fiscal year really just speaks to, their ability to do their job and do it well. So when you think of satisfaction, overall customer satisfaction, and then you think of the important satisfaction ratings, to me, we have to do what we have to do day to day to put service on the street to maintain those overall customer satisfaction ratings. But I think where we really can make a difference in the important satisfaction rate ranking in the resident survey, overall feelings of the quality of public transit, is really accomplished through the more transformational projects. And so I have just three, of the more transformational projects that we're working on to share with you this morning. The first one, of course, is our first bus rapid transit corridor. And I know council received a full update on that last week, so I won't dwell on it, but suffice it to say, we're looking forward to beginning revenue service in October of 2023. I've also briefly mentioned the comprehensive operational analysis, or the OKC Moves Bus Study. We expect to have recommendations wrapped up by the end of this calendar year, perhaps no later than January of 2022. And although I've mentioned a little bit about what the study is about, it basically helps us improve our current fixed route bus system, and we're going to get a set of recommendations, basically like we did last time, that if resources allow, we can make incremental improvements in the coming years. But one of the things I wanted to take the opportunity to mention to council, because it has been several years since we've done such a study, that we will be working very closely with the city manager's office as those recommendations are made, to make sure that council is completely informed if any routes are going to be affected in any of your wards. That's something that we did last time. We worked very closely with council, and we expect to do that in the future too. So our goal there is certainly no surprises for you or your constituents as these recommendations are made. And of course, there's a robust public engagement process that will be involved as we roll out those recommendations to the community. Excuse me. And then finally, the last transformational project we've worked on this year and accomplished is our support role with the Regional Transportation Authority of Central Oklahoma. Again, I understand council is familiar with this entity, a separate government entity, really tasked with furthering or advancing transit for the entire region. Consists of 6 cities, 7 board members, and 2 of those board members, of course, are representatives from the city of Oklahoma City. In April, the RTA approved their regional transit plan, which, as you can see on the map here, includes a north-south high-capacity transit corridor, a corridor out to the east serving Del City, Midwest City, Tinker Air Force Base, the potential for a corridor to the west, and then some type of high-capacity transit to the airport. So this vision plan that they've adopted will actually guide the next steps, further analysis of the corridors, prioritization of which corridors might be looked at more closely, and so forth. But a huge step in moving transit along in the region. Oh, apologies. All right. So drilling in a little bit more closely to the services we offer here in Oklahoma City only. One of the things I wanted to do was share some ridership data with council this morning, because again, with the idea of being able to demonstrate, what is being accomplished with the resources that are provided to public transit and parking. And, one of the best ways to measure that or to evaluate that, of course, can be through ridership. Now, it's no surprise, each one of the graphs that I'm going to share with council this morning are going to show declines. It goes without saying why those declines are being realized, but also I would remind council that for the fiscal year, we had capacity constraints on our transit vehicles. So we weren't able to provide all of the trips really that were demanded. Now, obviously, some of the customers that unfortunately we would have to pass up would simply, catch the next bus. But nonetheless, it limited the number of trips that we were able to provide. And of course, there's a multitude of factors why the transit industry is down as a whole in terms of trip volume. And it's no surprise we've seen impacts on our entire economy. But just to kind of give you an idea of total weekday bus ridership, I've got a graph here that I'll set up for you. And the line graph that you see is riders per service hour. And really, we always like to include this because it's the best way to measure ridership over a period of time, particularly when there are changes to service, because it's basically a ratio of ridership to service hours. Versus the bottom portion of the graph, or the bar charts, if you will, which is just simply average ridership per day. So as you can see, in normal circumstances, we average about 10,000 trips per day on our fixed route bus service during the weekday. Those are weekday operating hours. As you know, that translates to an excess of 3 million trips per year. And I believe in FY19, with all services, our trips were in excess of 3.2 million on an annual basis. In FY20 and FY21, we saw declines. In FY21, we're actually, we're actually at about 5,900 trips per day on our fixed route bus system during the weekday, as compared to previous years, which is closer to 10,000 trips. So nonetheless, we're still having almost 6,000 people or 6,000 trips per day through our fixed route system. Looking at our night bus ridership, this is one of the areas where we've seen the most growth in recent years. Now, keep in mind, we only have 5 routes that provide bus service till midnight. But as I mentioned in the past, it has been one of the fastest growing areas of our service. You can see in FY21, basically we provided about half the cumulative trips. I'm looking at the bar chart, half the cumulative trips that we did during our best performing year of FY19, where we provided 107,000 cumulative trips. So again, about a 50% decline. So in what we're looking at in night bus ridership. And then weekend ridership, again, you can see the decline, although it is a little less pronounced than weekday and weeknight. Cumulatively for FY21, we're at about 253,000 trips compared to the previous fiscal year, where we launched Sunday service and actually generated about 353,000 trips. So the decline there is right around 27-28%. So moving on, looking at streetcar ridership, again, very similar trend. We're at about half the cumulative ridership in FY21 that we were in the previous years. So I know I've shared a lot of data with you that shows declines in ridership, but I thought it might be helpful to try to put some perspective on that. And this data here is through a little bit, it's a different snapshot in time. This is data that we report to the American Public Transit Association, or APTA for short. And as you would expect, all transit systems across the country that are members of APTA report their ridership, and we do it on a quarterly basis. So this data here is the most recent APTA data, and it goes through the fourth quarter of the calendar year, so basically through December. And through December, you can see we've included a list of what we would consider to be peer agencies. Those are the Albuquerques, the Colorado Springs, Des Moines, Iowa. And then we've also included some larger systems. If you look over to the right of the graph, you can see the San Diego, Chicago, Houston, even New York City. And so what the bar chart represents here is declines in ridership. And so in this case, a shorter bar, if you will, is better in that it represents a smaller decline in ridership. So I wanted to share this because although we have seen some pretty significant declines in ridership locally, if you compare that to our peers and some of the large systems across the country, Oklahoma City, other than Kansas City, has the smallest decline in ridership of any of the peer transit agencies that we look at, and also has a smaller decline in ridership than some of the larger systems such as Houston, New York City, LA. Looking again at that calendar year snapshot, we were down right at about 33%. The light blue horizontal bar that you see there is to represent the average decline, which is closer to 41 or 42. So again, just wanted to share that with council to give you a perspective that although our ridership is down significantly, we're doing a little better than I think what we're seeing nationally in terms of declines. Last slide, or two more slides on ridership, again, to give you a sense of what's being accomplished with the resources and the budget. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our ADA plus ridership. So in the top left, you can see a graph of cumulative trips and then kind of the average daily trips that we provide. In a normal year, we're providing, excuse me, around 200 trips or so with our Embark Plus services. In FY21, we were down to about 150. And then on our senior services, again, you can see in FY21, we provided about 65,000 trips for seniors, down from, our normal, if you will, of, around 120. I think what you'll notice though is the percentage decline anyway with the Embark Plus, our ADA service, percentage wise is one of the smallest declines we've seen in any of our services, which I think just goes to show our customers that use that service are highly dependent on it for really all of their transportation needs. And then the last slide I have for ridership, you'll see where the senior services trips are down, particularly in FY21. So what we did, and this is really credit to the staff in our mobility management division, what we did is we really kind of transformed our business model, if you will, and instead of sticking with the same services, congregate meal trips to shopping centers, a lot of seniors were following best practice, staying indoors. Some of the congregate meal sites were closed. So we tried to adapt our business model and the trips we offered, excuse me, in some cases to bring items to seniors if seniors were unable to get out. So we delivered. So let me back up. So we provided 6,490 trips, if you will, that are outside of our normal realm of transportation services. And again, this was all just to try to adapt and have our services be relevant in the environment we were operating under. So you can kind of see the numbers there, but basically we did some different things. We expanded our non-emergency medical trips. Again, we delivered food boxes instead of taking seniors shopping. We provided some urgent need trips, excuse me, and then even some free transportation for vaccinations. We partnered with the health department, and if the health department identified a senior that was in need of a trip, we were glad to provide it. So that wraps up really kind of an overview, I guess, of the services that we provided last year, some of the ridership data. And the next few slides we'll get into the budget document. You can find our budget in the city's budget book on pages C-147 through C-156. But I might take this opportunity to point out, excuse me, kind of a nuance, if you will, of our budget. When you look in the budget book, for example, you're going to see a total budget of just over $23 million. Keep in mind that is just the city funded portion of the overall Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority budget. So what I've actually proposed and will share with council this morning is the overall budget that will go to the COTPA board, because it represents really the entire amount of resources for public transportation and parking services for Oklahoma City. So with that in mind, the FY22 overall COTPA operating budget is $46,579,849. And you can see on this graph here how that budget is allocated amongst the family of services that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. The one service, if you will, that I didn't specifically call out was our Norman bus service. And just as a refresher for council, we provide bus service for the city of Norman as a contractor. And as a contractor, we receive full cost recovery plus about 10% markup for our overhead and administrative expenses. So just again, as a reminder, we provide that service, but we do get full cost recovery on that. And then, of course, no surprise that our fixed route bus system, bus transit, makes up the majority of our overall budget at 69%, or just over $32 million. Just going down the list of numbers here, you can see our Norman services that I mentioned, 2.9 million. Our parking services, 5.1 million. That does include some additional expenditures for the new convention center parking garage. Our streetcar operating budget is just over $5 million. Ferry service for Oklahoma River cruises, as proposed, is $866,000. We'll see that is an increase from the previous year with the idea to restore that river ferry service. And then bike share at $152,000. So the next couple of slides, we'll look at the funding sources to support that overall COTPA budget. And of course, as you know, the general fund provides a significant level of support for transit service in Oklahoma City. So starting with funding sources for our off-street parking system, our daily transient parking makes up about 11% of our revenue, or $576,000. No surprise that the majority of our revenue is generated from monthly contract parkers. So these are customers that park in our garages each and every day. They have monthly contracts. They pay a certain rate to park there. That's $3.5 million, or 68% of our overall funding sources. Our event revenue, we have programmed or estimated at just under $1 million for the coming fiscal year. That's 18% of our total funding sources. And keep in mind, this is an area of revenue that was significantly impacted in the previous fiscal year. We collected very little event revenue. And then 164,000 of other revenue sources that could range from leases. As you know, we lease the first floor of the Arts District parking garage and some space over at the Santa Fe Depot. Could be comprised of interest and other items such as that. So that's a rundown of the funding sources for parking. And then I'll conclude my comments on the funding sources for parking by just reminding anyone that's listening that parking is basically financially self-sufficient. There's no general fund money or taxes that go into supporting our parking system. Our parking system is funded by the users of that system, whether they're purchasing monthly parking from us or daily parking. That's the revenue we use to support the system. So again, no general fund money at all for the off-street parking system. Okay, public transportation. Here's a look at our funding sources for public transportation. The city's general fund contribution proposed for FY22 is just under $18 million, or 43% of the overall budget. Federal funding is in second, if you will, at just over 15 million, or 37% of the overall budget. And that is a combination of both CARES funding and our maintenance reimbursement funding that we receive through our FTA 5307 grant. Our fare revenue is estimated to be $2 million, or about 5% of our overall funding sources. Excuse me. We do receive some funding from the state, so we've got about 1.4 million programmed into the budget for state revenue. And then other revenue sources of just under 5 million. And again, that can range from interest. It can range to some of the agreements we have with other cities, such as Norman, Midwest City, Oklahoma County, to provide transit service, and our area-wide aging agency funding. I'd like to acknowledge the planning department for allocation of CDBG funding to provide emergency transit services. So other funding sources there as well. So with that proposed budget that I just shared with council, I wanted to take a minute, if I could, to look at some of our major budget changes. And the first couple of major changes that I wanted to look at here was the implementation of a bus shelter cleaning program. As you know, we've had a lot of success in increasing the number of bus shelters within our system. In fact, we have nearly 300 shelters now, ADA accessible, lit, covered with trash receptacles throughout our system of about 1,400 bus stops. And we're continuing to add to that number. And with the implementation of the maps for bus shelters and bus stop lighting projects, I mean, we're truly going to see transformational change. Well, over half of our bus stops will have covered ADA accessible shelters, and all of our bus stops will have lighting. So truly transformational change. But with that comes the need to be able to keep up with, in particular, cleaning those locations and emptying the trash. And so within our budget, we have a proposal to add a bus shelter cleaning program, and that will basically add some frontline staff and a supervisor to essentially cover the city's bus shelters on a regular scheduled basis, making sure that they're being maintained in better order than we're currently able to do. So that enhancement, or that program improvement, is actually $295,990. That is included in the proposed budget, and it looks like on this slide we dropped a 2, so that's actually should be $295,990, and it's accurately reflected in the next slide where we list all of our major changes. So apologies for that, but wanted to point that out. And then the next really significant change we have is additional frequency to Route 18. This is a route, as you can see on the map here, on the image on the right, that basically serves Lincoln Boulevard, and will serve the new Homeland grocery store that's opening. Route 18, you've heard me mention before that as part of the Nelson Nygaard study from 2014, and year to year, with the support of council, being able to incrementally implement that plan and improve our transit. You've heard me say almost all of our routes are on 30-minute frequencies. Well, Route 18 is the last regular route, if you will, that is still on an hour frequency. So with approval of the proposed budget, we'll be able to add an additional bus to this route to provide 30-minute frequency to the new Homeland that's opening. And again, I just can't really thank council enough, or say how much we appreciate the support in allowing us to be able to incrementally implement that plan, to get to a point where here, just as we're starting our new comprehensive operational analysis, kind of finalizing that initial tier of recommendations from our last study to get all our routes to 30 minutes. I think it's quite an accomplishment. So we appreciate the support of council and the COTPA board to be able to do that. So those are our 2 major changes. Here's a list of our major budget changes included in the budget book. We are looking to increase the general fund subsidy for CARES replacement. So as you look at the city budget, you're going to see a rather dramatic increase in the overall city budget for public transportation and parking. But keep in mind, the city budget reflects, I believe we said 43% of the overall budget. And the city budget is also heavily weighted primarily towards the admin side of things, because we have most of our administrative, management, and executive team, not to mention all of the chargebacks that we pay for other internal department support, kind of all hitting that city budget. Whereas maintenance, parts, personnel costs related to operators, mechanics, that's all on the COTPA side of the budget. But we are looking to increase the general fund subsidy, again, in anticipation of, eventually that CARES funding running out. So, in my mind and working with finance, to me, I think it's just kind of a strategic incremental approach to slowly building that general fund subsidy back to where it was kind of in the FY20 fiscal year, before we saw the budget reductions and the reliance on CARES. So again, just slowly kind of working back that general fund subsidy. In addition to that, and I'll run through these pretty quickly, I appreciate council's time. Adding a senior project manager. I think from the presentation this morning, you can see the multitude of projects that we have going on. And I didn't even get a chance to mention the fact that in this last year, we negotiated an option to purchase some land adjacent to our current property over here at South May in anticipation of future expansion. So we have a lot of projects that are going on. Continuing the Spokies Bike Share program, the bus shelter cleaning and the frequency for Route 18, I've already mentioned. Restoring the Oklahoma ferry service, you'll see that's a $537,000 addition. And, you know, really just as a reminder to council, we have a lot of federal investment in that service as well. So there's some expectations from the FTA that service continues due to the amount of federal investment. And then, as I mentioned, parking increases for the new garage and event labor. So we added some event labor back, optimistic in anticipation of events in this next year. And then, of course, bringing a new garage online. So as I finish up, got just a few more slides. And again, I really appreciate the time. I wanted to just kind of dwell on what this last year, you know, has taught us. I know I mentioned and gave credit to our people, but I'm here to tell council and share with our board of trustees that we truly are a better organization, a better deliverer of transit and parking services as a result of overcoming our challenges together within this last fiscal year. We have made tremendous strides in internal communications. We learned new ways to communicate with our employees, whether it be through our weekly electronic newsletter. We have digital screens mounted throughout our facility now that keep employees up to date on anything from birthdays to latest COVID procedures. We've began an employee recognition program, which is just fascinating. I'd love to share some of the comments with you someday that employees are saying about other employees. That's our Stoke Storyteller program, which hinges on those 4 core values I mentioned of being safe, being there, being open, and being kind. Hiring. We were able to take advantage of a down employment market. And for the first time, at least in my history, we are full on mechanic positions here at Embark. So we were able to take advantage of the employment market this last fiscal year, talk about adapting virtually. You know, normally we have a health fair where we bring people to the transit center for flu shots. Well, we adapted our business model last year, and instead we provided free trips to clinics offering flu shots. Public engagement, we've learned an entirely new way to engage the public through virtual means. And then, of course, safety, cleaner buses and facilities. And then finally, conclude with a video, but also would really like to give a shout out to our senior leadership team. Just a virtual introduction here, starting kind of the top left and working our way around. We have Michael Scroggins, our PIM, Dan McKeon, our operations manager, Dennis Fry, our facilities and fleet manager, Kristen Torkelson, community engagement liaison, Suzanne Wickenkamp, assistant director of administration, and Jesse Rush, assistant director for operations. It's really the senior leadership team that really set the bar within this last year. I appreciate their commitment. There were weeks on end where we had daily check-ins, including weekends, as we were adapting our service delivery to ensure safety of customers and employees. And so they really were key in making anything you saw this morning in the presentation happen. And then finally, I'll just conclude with a 30-second video here. I'm going to make sure, hopefully I got the sound turned on, so bear with me.
When life is at a standstill, we notice movement. They say, we'll be back, but some of us have been here all along.
Oklahoma City is resilient. There's strength in our workers. There's courage, dedication, and drive.
To all the drivers, doers, helpers, riders, and all of those moving us forward, thank you. For those staying home, we saved you a seat. When life is at a standstill,
Sure you caught the gist the first time. Sorry for that repeat. The voice you heard there was our very own Ty Hawley that does all of our graphic design. She did a great job on the video, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share that. So with that, I will happy to take any questions.
Hey, Jason, it's Todd Stone. I do have a couple of questions on the BRT.
Yes, sir.
What is the cost of ridership going to be on that?
We haven't decided what the fare will be. We'll go through a process with the COPPA board similar to what we did with the streetcar, where we'll do an evaluation of peer systems. We'll make some recommendations to them. Well, I will tell you as staff, and we'd like to see it probably be as close, if not the same, as our fixed route bus system. But ultimately, be a decision of the board. Systems look at it both ways. It's a premium service, so sometimes they charge more. Other times it's just rolled into the basic fare set. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you on exactly what it'll cost.
That's fine. Do we have an estimate yet on the annual operating cost of each line?
Yes, we do. We're estimating about $4 million per year.
And that's per line?
Yes, sir. So the Northwest BRT, we're estimating at $4 million. Any additional BRTs would be in addition to that. And I'll let you know, I mean, we've already been kind of doing some scenario planning with the finance department, taking the approach much like we did with Oklahoma City streetcar, where we're trying to get out ahead of it as far as we can. We know it's coming.
And then my last question is question or comment, something I'd like to see and be interested in seeing is our streetcar ridership during large events, I guess, as we move back to having events in the city.
Yes, sir.
Specifically with the convention center and things like that. I think it'd really be interesting to see what the impact on our streetcars is with that. I mean,
okay.
We all have a lot of hopes that it's going to be utilized highly with those types of things. So I'd be really interested in seeing that as we move forward.
Okay.
And thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few questions too. Thanks for the presentation. As always, I just want to say thanks to all your staff and the amazing work they do day to day, getting folks around, especially in this last year with limited capacity and just the difficulty. I know I've been on a few buses where they've had to pass folks up, and it's never I've never seen an operator relish it. Or there was one time I actually was the 11th person on the bus, and so was not able to get, I had to wait 30 minutes. So, you know,
Okay.
We're looking forward to increased capacity, but I think that safety aspect really does speak to how safe people feel. Because I know even personally, knowing that I have had space between people as I'm taking trips, and has definitely felt, I haven't felt like, oh my gosh, I'm like surrounded by people coughing. So, so I really appreciate all the work your staff have done, and even joining us for a virtual town hall sometime last year. I think that was just really appreciate all the work you all do to get the word out about all the measures you've been taking. I'm curious if all the ridership numbers for the buses, and I guess even the streetcar, because I know there was reduced capacity, or is still some level of reduced capacity, are you seeing that that ridership is proportionate to the reduced capacity? That there's a bit of a, like, if usually you could have 30 people on a bus, but now you can have 10, that ridership number is actually pretty proportional to, if we did have full capacity, it'd probably be a similar ridership as previous years?
Yeah, we really haven't looked at it that granular, and only because I don't know that we can really. We have a ton of data, but if I'm understanding correctly, it would almost be like, what is our normal capacity on Route 5, despite how many people the bus can hold, right? And then what are we actually transporting? And does that match the fact that now we can only let 10 people on the bus, right? We just haven't went to that level. We could probably do like some spot checks on some of our more popular routes. And it would be an interesting exercise, especially to look at the peak times, I think.
Yeah.
Because we do have the data that we can say, like, on the 7 o'clock Route 5, we generally would have this many people, and now how many is it? So I'm certainly happy to maybe just kind of spot check a few of our more popular routes to see if that's the case. I'm very excited about the opportunity to increase capacity, working with the health department for best practices on doing that. And we actually met yesterday in plans of our next incremental step of increasing capacity further. We're discussing going up to 20 now on buses, fixed route buses.
Yeah, I think I just be curious because even in my own experience of like the 5 or I know like the 8 in the morning, it tends to be pretty busy, that I've been surprised that I haven't had to, sit back and wait more, or that I haven't seen people. So I'm just kind of curious if people have kind of adjusted to like, okay, I'm not gonna, instead of taking the bus today, I'm gonna try to hitch a ride with a friend or ride my bike,
Right.
something. So I was just kind of curious if it's proportional. I'm also, so with the new study with Nelson Nygaard, I know this conversation has kind of been bubbling up over the last, probably, since the, beginning of transit, this has been probably a conversation, but especially in the last few years, I've been seeing other cities go free fare just completely across the system. I know Kansas City did that recently, and I looked up their numbers. They had a $6 million fare hole to fill, if you will, and just seeing that ours is only 2 million. I know that there's always things to be weighed, but I'm curious in that new Nelson Nygaard study if there's any room for studying what it would look like to go to a fareless system, because I just think about all of the costs that go into implementing fares too, and if there's any balance to be found around, fare boxes, all the fare cards, even the app. Like, I'm just curious if there's, if we actually accumulated all the costs of enforcing fares and distributing fares, if it actually would not be that big of a hole, I suppose, to fill, to just have a fare-free system across the board.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk with the consultants about that. I don't know that in fact, it's not in their scope now. But yeah, we'll talk to them about it and see if they can give us some guidance. We also did hire a consultant just for a fare study, 4 nines. We're certainly happy to reach out to them as well too. And you did mention, Kansas City being free fare. One of the questions I had for staff, when we were reviewing that ridership decline data, I was like, well, what Kansas City do? They held on a little better than us. What would they do? And although it's anecdotal, we don't know everything, but they did. They offered free fares the whole period there. And so we kind of attributed, some of that, them to being able to hold their ridership to that as well.
Yeah, because I even, and I think this, it's like you said, it's kind of hard sometimes to attribute this, but, I think about that $2 million and, that going back into the pockets of our residents who are using these various systems, especially what we know about our bus riders, that they're kind of on the lower side of the income spectrum, that money is not just going to sit around, like that's going to go back into the economy in some way. And so there's still a benefit that we would get. It might not be that direct and obvious, but I just think that there's ways, just seeing that that's been a push. And I know apparently Boston, there's a few advocates in Boston that on the council that are really trying to push for this, and just kind of some equity in just that just being able to say, everyone, you don't have to apply to get reduced fare. You don't have to do these things.
Yeah.
Just kind of making it a little easier to access for some of our residents who are on fixed incomes or what have you, could be a really big impact, I think, but thank you so much for your presentation, and excited about the Route 18. That's a route that I'm always either super early for something or super late for something, because it only runs once an hour. So I'm excited about the prospect of a 30-minute headway on that.
All right, good.
Hey, Jason, Mark Stonecipher here. A couple of
Yes,
quick
sir.
questions. One of the things that stood out in your presentation, which was excellent, by the way, when you said what last year taught us, and we're better when we overcome our challenges together, and that was really meaningful to me. You noted that ridership is down across the board in Oklahoma City, and then you mentioned APTA, which has been talking about ridership is down nationally. One of the things we do when we meet to discuss the economy each year is we meet with Russell Evans, and he kind of gets out his crystal ball and gives us a prediction for the future. What are the national folks saying? What are you saying about ridership and where we're going to see ourselves a year from now, in your mind?
Yeah. So nationally, what I'm hearing is, a gradual rebound. Like I don't think anybody in the industry and even locally expect, next year to be able to give this presentation and say, hey, we're back, So I would say a gradual rebound, probably building that ridership back up, at least locally, over the next couple of years. But that's the general consensus of what I'm hearing from our association. And it's a focus on, and we're talking here locally too, particularly with the role of our community engagement liaison, is being very purposeful about getting back out in the community, if you will, and introducing people back to transit for those that may have just abandoned it completely over the last year and a half, right? So we're going to be focusing our efforts on a lot more marketing and outreach in the coming year. I think you're going to see that industry-wide as well.
Yeah, then the next question I had was off-street parking for a second. You mentioned that no general funds money is being used for that. Users fund the operations of off-street parking. And with the new convention center parking opening up, is it anticipated that the same will be true with that area for parking? Yeah,
that garage is included in our overall parking system, if you will. So and so even if that garage, let's say, for example, is operating at a deficit, particularly during the opening months and before conventions start really coming in, it's revenues generated from other garages in the system that offset that. Was that the gist of the question?
Yeah, if we have other systems that will offset the deficits.
Yeah, the other garages will carry, say, an underperforming or new garage like the convention center garage. And I don't mean to use the word underperforming. It's brand new, so we don't even know what the capability is yet.
And then on your major budget changes on page C149,
yes, sir.
We talk about some additional funding expenses for the new convention center garage. Can you kind of expound upon what additional expenses are being incurred there, please?
Yeah, it looks like we have them lumped together with the event labor, but basically with the new garage, it's primarily labor costs. So it's cleaning and, maintaining the elevators, paying the utility bills, those kinds of things.
Okay, then last on major budget changes, items 10 through 13, you see align with current department needs, high demand for marketing and public information, align with current departmental needs at 13. How is our department changing? What are the needs that are changing that you're talking about there?
Okay, let me give you just one moment to get to that.
Councilman Stonecipher, I had a difficult time hearing you. Also, I don't know if you all can hear me because my internet does fun things these days.
Can you hear me now, James?
Yes, sir. Thank
I
you.
think I'm kind of like Jason. My sinuses are bothering me a little, so sorry about that.
Okay, so let's see. Could you repeat the numbers? Did you say like 4 through?
No, 10 through 13, it repeatedly mentions that we need to align it with current department maps, or we need to deal with a high demand for marketing and public information. And I just wanted to understand, how's the department changing?
Yeah, well, my answer to that is we actually, in a sense, pride ourselves on our ability to change and adapt. And so anytime we have an opportunity, particularly with a vacant position, to say like, okay, let's fill that position. Wait a minute, let's stop. Do we really need that same kind of position? Or is there something else we can do with those resources? So like, for example, I'll just give you a couple of examples. So for like number 12, deletes a vacant graphic design specialist and adds a PIM coordinator to help support the high demand for marketing and public information. We used to have 2 graphic design specialists. So they would help with all the presentations, all the content you see on social media, that heavy graphic type stuff that takes a lot of time to really do it right. And we had an individual leave us, actually moved out of state, went to work at a police department, interestingly enough, for doing their graphic design. So we evaluated that internally. We said, do we really need another graphic design specialist, or where do we really need help? And it's like, well, we need help managing more of the overall responsibilities of the marketing department, not just a person that can do graphic design. So that's kind of what we meant by, well, let's do that with those resources instead of another graphic design person. Item 10, for example, deleting an administrative coordinator and adding a unit operations leader to better align with current department needs. Again, this is us saying, well, we have a customer call center. Are we doing it the best way we can? Maybe, but you know what? Utilities, they have a really big customer call center. How do they structure their call center? Well, they have supervisors that are unit ops leaders versus a more administrative type position. So again, we're just trying to take an opportunity to, I guess, improve, if you will, with very little change in resources. Like that actually saves us $7,900. The other one adds $887. So does that kind of get at the gist of that? Or I'm happy to go through any more of them.
Yeah, that was very helpful. I'm just trying to understand how your department is changing. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I had a couple questions, and I also want to say thank you, Mr. Jason, for everything we've been able to do as far as serving Northeast Oklahoma City during the pandemic and beyond with our food access and you all being so gracious. So I want to continually say thank you for that. But my questions are pertaining to Route 18 as far as that frequency aspect. One part of that is, as we look at increasing the frequency with the added buses, are we also going to look at increasing or adding better or more shelters to those bus stops as well? And the reason I am asking that is because of now some of the changes that have taken place through the state, especially with our OK Works Job Center is now located off of 55th and Lincoln. So now we have people coming over there that have to be there in order for them to look for jobs. And so this is very timely for us to do this frequency. So thank you for that. But that's one question. And then my second ask about this same route is, are we going to also be able to extend this particular route to midnight?
The funding that we've proposed does not run the bus till midnight. It's not going to, at this time, plan to be a night route. We do plan to offer weekend service and weekday, but no night.
Okay.
And we are happy to look at the bus shelters. And in fact, we're kind of always playing catch up to those trip generators as they're moving and change. So if there are ones that you know of, like the one you mentioned on that route that we should be aware of, we'll certainly look at for a shelter.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question pertaining to the new parking garage. I had some folks reach out and ask, so this is the perfect time to ask you while I have you here,
Okay.
if there is a possibility of monthly passes for that particular garage, and if so, how can they obtain them?
So yes, we have a limited amount of monthly contract parking we could do, kind of first come, first serve, just like with any garage. So yeah, have them contact me or parking services manager Corey Hubert, and we're happy to let them know what we can do.
Okay. And then I know one of my other questions that we've been looking at is our transportation access for our Spencer Green Pastures, kind of that far east part of our city. So I'm hoping, since we couldn't get it in this budget, that maybe we can look at adding and increasing some type of way for us to get more ridership and more frequency, particularly in that part, because of the ways that we know right now, it's very difficult for some of our folks to access public transportation in those areas.
Agree.
But other than that, again, I say thank you, and looking forward to this frequency for Route 18.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Go
ahead, Councilman.
I was waiting because y'all know I got some stuff on this. First, Jason, just a million thank yous. And I would extend those thank yous to the people you named earlier: Dennis, Michael, Kristen, Suzanne, Jesse, Dan. I would also extend that to Marilyn, who remains just, to me, one of the most thoughtful and compassionate and efficient humans Oklahoma City has to offer. I just really appreciate her work with the services we provide to our seniors and those who just need that extra bit of assistance to get them to non-emergency medical, groceries, you name it. So I just really wanted to thank her. And then this other Embark employee has been on my mind lately. So this is field trip season and graduation. I just think about my middle schoolers, and I just wanted to send a thank you to Debbie Lucas, who used to always help coordinate our field trips. And remember, this is a reminder to everybody who might be watching, come this time next year, or hopefully just heading into the post-pandemic world this fall, hopefully, that Embark provides through our Road Scholar program free field trips for our students as they utilize the bus system. So anyway, Debbie's been on my mind this time of year, so I just wanted to say thank you to her as well.
I'll pass that along.
Thank you. So I have a series of things. First, would you remind me on the bus rapid transit? You made me think about it with the streetcar real-time arrival. Are we heading that direction as well with the Northwest BRT?
Yeah, we should be able to. Yes, that's the vision. Whether, kind of like the streetcar, whether that is perfected on day one is yet to be determined. We will definitely have real-time arrival information, but whether or not we have a actual map showing the location of the buses on the corridor, that may be like a phase 2. But yeah, absolutely real-time arrival information at all of the platforms.
Wonderful. 2, congratulations on this bus shelter cleaning. I think that is a wonderful investment. Just really wanted to say thank you. And this actually might be a question for City Manager Freeman. In fact, I'm fairly certain it is. Well, when will we be hearing a little bit more about, I understand, is it the Better Way program in Tulsa? I know with homelessness, we're kind of talking about doing some other sort of cleaning efforts around the city. Will we be hearing about that at some point during this budget presentation this month?
Sure. We didn't have that scheduled, but we can definitely make sure that as we go through the wrap up and get back to what we're doing, it's one of them that doesn't it's not specifically in a department. I think planning department's going to help manage part of the program, but there's going to be parts of it that are in other areas. And so we can definitely get some more information, not just on Better Way, but probably broader, because what we're looking at with the Shine program as well. And both of those, as you know, we're trying to get initiated now and this year to get it started up so it's ready to go for next year. And so we can get some more information back to you on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I believe this bus shelter cleaning approach, I think this is going to be something that a lot of residents, transit riders or not, are going to really find that a very thoughtful investment. And I think especially as we start gravitating toward, as Jason pointed out earlier, moving to well over half of the system's transit stops actually being these covered bus shelters. And I think for residents to know that those maps for investments that will help get us there, plus these previous investments, knowing that we're going to be good stewards of those investments, I think that will mean a lot. And I would actually really encourage us to promote that is something that we're doing, to let people know that. I just really think this is a wonderful approach. And I just really want to commend you all for this. And that's why, secondly, I think it will be I am certain it will be very helpful for council and our residents to hear more about what we're thinking to do as a city as it relates to, helping to, again, be stewards to the land itself. I've received, as I'm sure many of our offices have, so many calls and emails about, I-44 and, 39th and Penn, or, you name it, there are these places. And I think it's wonderful that our city is heading in a direction that I guess we'll be hearing a little bit more about later. So thank you.
And I think too, we'll have, Councilman, I believe we'll have the Shine contract. I think we're planning to have it on for the 25th. So that might kind of lead its way into giving us a good opportunity to have a broader conversation on that topic.
Cool. Thank you, City Manager. Next, congratulations, Jason, on those mechanic positions and filling those. I think that's a wonderful.
It's huge for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I nerd out when it comes to transit. So some of this stuff, I'm just like, mechanic positions, yes.
Yeah. it's incredibly helpful, and something we always struggle to fill are those mechanic positions. So a lot of competition for diesel mechanics.
And this next one's a question. So you mentioned the flu vaccine that we've been successful in the past in administering, particularly at the transit center. I know Councilwoman Hammond and I have both mentioned to Oklahoma County health officials, and I believe to you all at Embark, that, we're now in this vaccine hesitancy. That's the phrase, people who are not anti-vaccination, but now it's more of a conversation of like convenience, and they've thought about it, but they work a lot. So now I'm wondering, like, is this an opportunity to, at the transit center, now that we're moving away, at least when I hear, I attend every Friday, those weekly OK County health official every Friday since this began. I hear we're now moving away from the big pods of 1,000, 3,000 people, and we're trying to meet people where they are. Strikes me that the transit center is an opportunity for that. Have there been any more recent conversations?
I think we certainly would welcome, I think, an event like that at the transit center. And then also, I've learned, other systems have adapted buses to be like a mobile vaccination site, right? So take the bus, for example, to a neighborhood. And so those are things that we can do, and the FTA, fully endorses that use of rolling stock for that purpose. So, we're more than happy to partner in those ways if the health department would like for us to get involved.
City Manager Freeman, what can we do about that? Because I had not heard that last idea, and that really strikes me with what I've been hearing on these Friday updates. Like, and as we've been looking at the kind of digging into the zip codes in the city where we're seeing some of the lower vaccination numbers, it makes a lot of sense that taking a bus into some of these neighborhoods in addition to the transit center. So what can we do to make sure that county health officials and Embark, when their powers combine, sort of moment?
Yeah, I know that Jason has conversations with them periodically on different topics related to health issues. So us being available and just letting them know that's something that's another tool in their tool belt, you know, that says that if you need to and you have this specific area you need to try to address, that it's an option. I know they have multiple different ways that they'll go out on mobile sites. And so this is just another one that we could offer to them. And so we'll make sure that they're aware of that. We'll have conversations with Phil and his team to let them know and make sure that they're aware that that's something that's available to them.
Thank you, City Manager. And put me to use. I'm happy to go out with those buses. I'm happy to hang out at the transit center. I've done this with other events. I'm sure I don't want to sign up my fellow councilwoman, but I think, yeah, I can see the smile already. I see Nikki perking up. So, and any other council member, especially if we can go into our respective wards, like, you know, Todd led us off this morning with questions about Embark. So I just think, yeah, that's a wonderful way to do that. So keep me posted. Happy to do what I can. Signing you up too, Todd. You heard me. Good. That's the smile I was looking for. I also wanted to say thank you for adding that full year of Spokey service back. I think that's very important. I'm really very thankful for that. I'm going to add my voice to the adding of the bus operators to increase the frequency on Route 18. And thank you, Councilwoman Nice, for giving that extra bit of context. I didn't know that in terms of OK Works and the shelter needs. I think that's very helpful. And really also congratulations, Jason and Embark and the city on this being the final route from that hour to 30 minutes. Like this moment should not go by without some major kudos. This is what, 10 years in the making, right? From that Nelson.
At least since 2014. So almost, not quite, but almost, yeah.
That's super cool. And I just really want to commend you all for getting there. I would note, as Councilwoman Nice kind of was, as she was describing the needs over there, I would ask that as we're doing this comprehensive study, that I believe we're going to be looking at just night route, looking at the whole system and looking at where can night routes expand, et cetera. As I was looking at the map, it really strikes me that with that new senior center that's coming at 36th and Lincoln and Homeland at 36th and Lincoln, it strikes me that that route is a prime candidate for an after 7 p.m. So just if we can make sure that they are aware of that, I think that would be helpful, or just aware that there's a new service, whether or not that's the one they recommend, you know. Let's see, congrats to the employee pay increases, because COPPA has been through it this last year. We've all been through it, but like the way public transit has really showed up, I think is wonderful. Also, thank you, as Councilwoman Hammond noted, the town hall assistance you all gave us during the pandemic, like that was very helpful in participating in that. And just a final few things. One, as we start talking about this we're not in a post-pandemic world. As we start talking about what a post-pandemic world is about to become, I would just, take it for what it's worth. But as you mentioned, marketing to help get people back into it. And I'm just going to, something I've spoken about a lot, but I think that an approach that might be really useful is talking about using the buses and Spokies and the streetcar to a lesser extent, but it is well to connect to these districts. Like, and that's not a knock against the streetcar, it's just that it's serving very specifically Bricktown, Midtown, downtown. Whereas the bus system, right, if utilized properly, we can move you around from Lake Hefner to Windsor to Stockyards to Capitol Hill. And I think as we're moving into especially late summer, early fall, and people are, as we've learned from the pandemic, wanting to be outside, I think saying to people like, this is how we can utilize this service. That would be an approach I would suggest, but Michael Scroggins can take that and run with it because he's incredible, as we know. But that would be something I would connect people to places. Like, I think that is a significant thing. And it echoes my remarks from last week with the BRT. I really think that's going to be a wonderful opportunity to say to everybody that this is about connecting you to the Buy for Less, the library in Belle Isle, Uptown, Asian District Plaza, downtown. I see all that potential. So it might be a way to get people thinking about where that BRT is heading and what it can do. On the comprehensive study, I think it's important that we look in Ward 2 at the Western Avenue. I've had people who work at Costco near Memorial, right, but who live on the southern end, of the ward, and they find it just next to impossible because there's no bus that gets you right there.
No service to Costco, agree.
So that would be very helpful. And now we can also, if we can figure that Western component out, not only that, but we can connect people to recreation and employment with stuff like Chisholm Creek, right? I mean, there's just stuff right there. Get them to Memorial Road generally, where there are all of those jobs and recreation and sales tax revenue. And then just finally, because I'm just really kind of teeing you up for a softball here, but I think it's important to always kind of remind ourselves of the goal. Can you remind us why that 15-minute frequency or less is so important? And so that's my first question. Then just finally, like, I know we're heading into this comprehensive study land, but like right now, what are you just sort of anticipating now that we've gotten to this, all the routes 30 minutes or less? What are you kind of anticipating the next 10 years, dream big sort of things for us? Not take it where you'd like, sir.
Well, I mean, dreaming big, thinking about the next steps. I mean, I think it's just, continual evolution of public transit in Oklahoma City. We know it continues to rank high with our residents. We looked at the important satisfaction ranking earlier today. But 30 minutes was kind of and we've talked about it before, 30 minutes is kind of just that minimum level of frequency you need for transit. So to me, the next steps are obviously, being careful about, resource needs and such. But 15 minutes is really that next interval. And it can be, even then it can be incremental, right? It can be incrementally looking at the corridors or the routes that would benefit the most from 15 minutes and just incrementally working our way through that, just like we did to get them to 30 minutes. It doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing, but looking very far out, if you were at a position where you had a majority of your routes on a better frequency, then you have more flexibility in terms of how you design your routes, because you're able to transition more to that grid type system where transfers can be throughout the city, not necessarily all right at the downtown transit center. Because with frequency, you don't have to wait so long, right? So it's not as big of a deal to wait at a bus stop at Memorial and Western for 10 minutes for, a southbound bus to meet up with your east-westbound, right? Because you're maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most, versus now if you had to wait, especially in some of Oklahoma's weather, at least, 20 to 30, it's a big difference. I mean, we all know, even with the streetcar, that's why I love the real-time interactive map. I mean, you guys, anybody knows, like when you're waiting on a transit trip, that's like the slowest moving clock ever. 5 minutes feels like 15. So anyway, 15 minutes frequencies would be a wonderful priority. And I think what we're going to see, to answer your second part of your question, as far as the study and where it's going to go, we've really challenged the consultant with providing us options, right? So what can we do to improve our system with our current resources? We're not like, we can't get any more money, but how can we improve our system? We still want to do that. And then if there's some additional resources available in the future, what would we prioritize? And then we kind of are asking them for maybe an unconstrained resource scenario, right? If resources weren't a deal, what are all the things you could do? And I think that really kind of tees us up for the RTA discussions, looking to the future of the possibility of a dedicated funding source. At least we would have those tools available and we know where to go. We'd be able to continue to work our plan. And I think that's one thing the city council and the Coppell Board of Trustees can really hang their hat on is, getting those recommendations from consultants and looking at that plan and really working it every year based on resource availability.
Thank you. Well, I can just listen to you talk about this forever, but I know we have other presentations ahead of us. And I'll just say thank you again. And I'll just echo again some comments I made last week. As we in finance and the budget and city manager's office work with Embark to think about the BRT, and goes back to Councilman Stone's like opening question about the operating cost. I know it's outside the box thinking what I'm about to say, which is a repeat from last week. But we should really give it the old college try to think about after 7 o'clock service on that BRT. I just, the more I've thought about it, the more important that is to connecting people to the different recreation opportunities in downtown, Plaza, Asian District, Uptown, all along Classen and Expressway. Recreation, employment, OCU is right there, education as well. I just, it would send such a message as we are heading into that comprehensive guide, and looking at maybe other feeder routes, whether it's Southwest 29 or it's getting people down Walker to downtown, or it's Northwest 23rd. But this really needs to be like, I'd love to hear we tried more. We just say, no, I'd love to hear we tried. That's my ask, please.
Okay, and just to be clear, make sure I understood. So we do plan to run the BRT at least until midnight, potentially out to 2 a.m. on the Fridays and Saturdays. But you're asking about the frequency past 7 o'clock.
Yes, but I will tell you already that makes me feel better what I'm hearing.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely plan to extend the hours at least until midnight. We did plan on reduced frequency, maybe going to, instead of 12 to 15 minutes, more like 20 minutes during those evening hours. But I understand you want us to kind of look at it holistically there. So.
Yes, that's the missing thing I didn't say. Thank you for asking that clarification. Okay. If we can get that, thank you for that. That frequency alongside that. Yes, that's my challenge. But also, congratulations on your presentation, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the presentation there.